you looking for affordable office space in Marion? The professional building located at 685 Delaware Avenue is the place for you. For more information, call 740-383-6803. Office space is now available. Again, telephone number 740-383-6803. And today is a real treat, as I'm joined by a lady who has led a great and long life. Emphasis on the term long. 104-year-old Helen Crouse. Helen, how are you?
Fine.
Such a pleasure to be with you. I was working at WMRN, and I interviewed you when you were 102, and here you are still going strong at 104, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you.
So glad to be with you. Does 104 feel any different than 102?
I'm not quite as strong as I was. I miss my able to do things because of my hands. My fingers are numb and they can't do anything for them.
Now, Helen, I remember we spoke when you turned 102, and you said you had just given up driving.
Yes, I did.
Right. Now, have you went back to it at all, or are you totally done with that?
I was driving one day, realized I didn't have a hold of the steering wheel. I had a hold of it, but I didn't know it because of my fingers. And I went home that night after my meeting, laid the keys on the table. And I said to my son, I'm through driving. The keys are yours and also the car.
Was that difficult for you? That's hard for a lot of people.
Well, I was the type of person that seemed to pick up other people who couldn't drive. And that day, this huge truck was over his share of the line, and I could have rolled the car over because there was very little berm. And I thought, of all the years of driving, I've never had an accident. And if that had happened that day and the ladies I had in the car got hurt, I'd never forgive myself.
Mm.
And if the good Lord said, that's it, Helen.
I understand that. Helen, before we get into the bulk of this interview, I want you to state, just for the record, when and where were you born? The year and the date you were born.
I was born in Columbiana County in a little town called East Fairfield. In January the 17th, 1908.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. What was your childhood like, Helen? What was it like growing up?
It was wonderful, I think. My mother's sister was a teacher, and I was the first granddaughter in that family, the first of any of them. And everybody took me in, it seemed. But my mother's sister taught me, after she found out I liked books, and she taught me how to write my name. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, I knew the sounds of the alphabet, and I wanted to learn to read. So I was really anxious to go to school.
Did you have plans to go to college then, Helen?
Yes, I did. That's one reason I had to change high schools. Because the high school I was at that time, many of the high schools were only 4 or 3 years, and they had no science courses. So I had to I had a choice of 3 or 4 other high schools, and I changed because I was living with my grandparents and it was in the same town. So I went to Columbiana High School.
When you were in high school, did you know what career path you wanted to go on?
Yes, I thought I did. I really wanted to be a nurse. But my sad dad said, no, you're going to teach school. So that's what I thought I was going to do.
Do you ever regret not becoming a nurse?
Yes, there's something about things that I see in the paper or anything that's on the medical line. It just sort of draws me.
What years were you in college?
I only had 2 years at Mount Union College in Alliance because the depression was so bad. My 3rd year, I couldn't go back. But I had enough education that I could teach.
So this would have been in the 1930s you were in college?
It was, I graduated in 26. It was really 27 and 28.
There's not too many people around who can tell me what college was like in the 1920s. What was college like?
Well, I thought I didn't think it was hard. I enjoyed the other students. And then, for some reason, the football coach needed a person to help his wife take care of their 3 small children. And for some reason or other, he chose me. So that way I got into all the sports free and met all the athletes that came to the house. So I really enjoyed my 2 years.
I can imagine. What was it like being a teacher?
Well, believe it or not, I never became a teacher.
Is that right?
I was accepted to teach math in the middle schools. And at one of the meetings, after we had signed our contract and all, they said we wouldn't get our pay until January. Now, I had to have a car to get to school. It was about 15 miles from where I was staying. And it hit me. I had paid the car half down, but I had to make a payment every month. Plus, I had to live on. And that was a big shock. And so, shortly after that, I called and told them I could not teach. I'd have to get another job. And I did.
What did you end up doing?
I ended up getting a job as assistant manager of an A&P store. And I got paid every Saturday night.
Did you ever regret not teaching?
A little bit, yes.
What do you make of schools nowadays? In 2012, what do you make of schools?
Really, it's hard for me to understand because years later, after I could have gone back to teaching, but I got married. those days, you were not allowed, a woman was not allowed to teach if she was married.
Mm. Did
So
you?
later on, after my two boys were in school, the school hired me to run and do the bookwork and ordering for their cafeterias. Now, we had 7 boardman schools in Mahoning County, and that was a pretty big job. So I took that. So I was back in school for 25 years when I retired.
Were you angry that they didn't allow women who were married to teach? Did that make you mad at the time, or did you just figure that's the way it is?
I didn't like it.
So you're glad times have changed?
Yes.
I can understand that. Is it hard to go into a school? Well, I guess I want to say this. Did you ever want to teach while you were in that school working?
Not too much, because I was so busy. I don't think I thought too much about it anymore.
When did you finally retire?
I retired in 1973.
So you've had an extensive retirement.
Yeah.
What's it been like? What's retirement like?
I've often said, I feel like I'm living in a world today that I wasn't born into.
Explain that.
Well, everything's so changed. When I was a younger girl in the grade school, I was sent to take care of my grandmother, who had 2 sons in the World War over in Germany. And it took 2 months almost to get any word to how they're doing. And they were taken out of college, drafted. And Grandma became very depressed because she was all by herself. The other children were married and gone. So I was with her. And I would say that in my younger life was a bigger turning stone in my life, because she was really wonderful. She was very kind. She didn't bawl you out. But what she said to you meant more than any talking back I would do or anything. For one day, I was taking piano lessons, and she said, "You don't have a very good lesson today." Now, you know, a 12-year-old thinks they know it all. So I just said to Grandma, "I know it well." Now, you'd have thought she'd have bawled me out. What she said, stood there and I could see her beautiful blue eyes just, "Young lady, when you think you know it all, you're going backwards."
At 104, Helen, do you think you know it all now? Or are you still learning every day?
There's something to learn every day, every day.
You know, Helen, when you retired in the 1970s, did you ever think you were going to live to be 100, let alone 104?
No, I never thought about it before I got 100. And everyone started talking about it. I thought, what the... I came from a family that people lived a long time, so I was used to that. They were in their 90s, many of them. And, of course, I never knew my great-grandfather. But they said he lived to be 101. Now, back in those days, he must have been a pretty healthy man.
Especially for a man, they tend to die earlier than women.
Right.
Helen, at 104, what is the quality of life like? Because I often hear people say, I don't want to live that long because my quality of life will be diminished. What's your quality of life at 104?
Well, I don't know why many people, come up and say to me, you are sure an inspiration to me. I knew if I didn't go to church today and you did, I'd feel guilty. And so many people say, I don't know why they think I'm an inspiration, but they'll tell me that.
I understand it. I understand it right along with them. Helen, one of the things, sadly, as you get older and live to be 104, is the death of family and friends. How do you deal with that?
I didn't think too much about it until this past month. And my son and I visited the nursing home 4 times. And this one young gentleman, who was a very good friend of my son's, I couldn't believe he had died, for I had talked to him about at least a month to 6 weeks before. And I stood there and I said to myself, Bud, you should be looking at me, not me looking at you. And it hit me, because he was so much younger than I was.
Is there a guilt with that, Helen?
No, it's trying to understand.
Have you been able to understand it and make peace with it?
I sometimes fight with it a little bit.
One thing I want to talk about, Helen, because I think it's very important. You've come from a family that lives a long time. But what are the other secrets to making it to 104? Do you eat healthy? Do you exercise? Did you exercise? What's the secret?
Well, I was born on a farm, and there was always, and I was the oldest of 6 children. And you help your mother with the other smaller children to look. So I learned to take care and do things, and I seemed to enjoy what I was doing. I never looked at work as something I wish would go away, but I always looked forward for what my grandma told me when she said, you think you know it all? You're going backwards. That taught me that you never do all you could do. You could always get better.
Are you a healthy eater?
I've always been a pretty good eater, yes.
Do you ever go to fast food?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But in moderation.
No, right. Right.
In this life of 104 years, have there ever been health problems or close calls?
Yes. I've almost died 3 times.
Mm.
And I didn't even know about it, because I don't feel pain like the average person. So I get sick and my parents wouldn't know I was sick because I didn't feel the pain. I didn't complain. So that's the reason I would get myself into a little trouble.
What were the close calls, if you'd like to talk about them, the 3 times you almost did pass away?
When my colon bursted.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital for over a month.
That would be a close call, my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I had a ruptured appendix when I was 5 months pregnant. And then the last one was, they did think I'd make it. I had pneumonia and a heart attack.
How old were you when that happened, Helen?
Gee, how old was I, John? 103?
102 when you had the pneumonia and the heart attack, and you survived.
Yes.
Helen, a lot of people wouldn't have. What do you attribute surviving pneumonia at 102 years old?
I think the good Lord just isn't ready, or don't have room for me, or don't want me.
I'm sure he wants you. It's probably just not ready. That would be the one I would take, Helen. The 3 times you almost did pass away, a lot of people talk about it. Was there a white light? Did you see anything like that? Nothing like that.
No, nothing.
Helen, because you have such more than a century of life, I want to shoot some things out at you, big world events. You tell me what you remember. World War I.
That's when I lived with my grandma to take care of her. World War I was very hard because the thing that has changed for me the most is communication. When you think of World War I, you didn't get any word from Germany for at least 6 weeks. Now you get a few seconds. And look what all you've done with the internet and all this.
World War II. What are your memories of that?
Well, I worried for my mother. I had a brother that was missing 3 different times, and he also had malaria. And they came and told my mother the first time, which was a bad mistake because there was no one there with her. And that is a law now with the war. If you have to report that or a death, there has to be somebody else around.
We touched on it earlier on, the Great Depression. What was the Great Depression like?
Well, people got along well together. Like if, say for instance, you had a couple of fruit trees in your yard, and it seemed the good Lord that during Depression seemed to provide the weather that everything grew well, you would go and help that person pick that fruit. Then they divided among all the people. Very friendly and all.
The Vietnam War.
That hurt. My son was in that. And I'll never forget, when I was working at school all those years, at Christmas time, my husband and I would go to Florida. We had a 3-week vacation at Christmas. And we came home. Now, he had been graduated from college, had a good working job. And when we opened the door and saw down at the foot of the stairs a duffel bag that was like a knife, I knew they had taken him. And he had been turned down twice before. And Vietnam War was, to me, terrible. Should never have been.
During that time, we also probably had the biggest presidential scandal, Watergate. What are your memories of Watergate?
You know, I never studied much on politics, so I really don't know.
One thing that you lived you lived the entire duration of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, Cuban Missile Crisis. What was that like?
Really, most of my friends didn't talk about it. They didn't want to think about it.
Want to talk about two of the biggest tragedies, and I don't know anybody who's lived through both of these, and you were a fairly mature woman when they both happened. Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
What was that like?
My brother was in that.
Really?
Right. So it was day by day waiting.
When word came that the country had been attacked, what was it like as an American?
I think I remember saying to my husband, I just want to close my eyes and forget it, not talk about it.
Did your brother ever have any stories from Pearl Harbor that he shared with you?
Not too many, no. He didn't even want to think about it.
And the other great tragedy of the American time, 9/11. Memories of that?
Yes, I was down visiting my other son in New Jersey. And we got a telephone call from a friend and said, something terrible has happened. He says, I could see the smoke. So we went out in the yard and we saw the flames, because he lives that close. And we didn't right away, didn't know, we thought it was an accident right away. But it soon proved what it was.
Helen, you were, I'm trying to do the math here, you would have been in your 90s when that happened. What was that like to see this country attacked like that?
Well, it was bad. Because I was down at my son's for a party, and I had a round-trip ticket to get back home. Well, as you know, all flights were canceled everywhere. And in the meantime, I started not feeling very good. It was like indigestion. And I wished I was home. So since I couldn't get home anyway, because there was nothing going. They even stopped the buses, or just between short rides. And my son said, well, he had just got a new truck. He says, if you think you would like to go home, I'll take you. Now, from New Jersey to our place could be an 8 to 11 hour drive. and I wasn't feeling well. Well, it turned out after I finally got home, and then they took me to the hospital, it wasn't indigestion. I'd had a heart attack the whole way. So I will never forget the 9/11.
Wow. Helen, this heart trouble over the years, are things under control at 104?
They seem to be.
Good.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I know you are not much of a interest in politics, as you said, but I think this is fascinating. You've lived through 19 presidents. 19. You were born under Teddy Roosevelt. That's amazing. Helen, I'm just going to throw the name out at you. You can say one word. You can give your thoughts on them. Doesn't even have to be political. Just tell me what you think of the man, and we'll start with Teddy Roosevelt. I know you were only a year old when he left, but tell me about Teddy Roosevelt.
I don't know much about him.
Taft.
I remember Taft. Yes, I remember.
Good or bad memories?
I remember, I think I started voting around 28 to 29 in there.
Wilson.
Yes, I remember Wilson.
Did you like Wilson?
Not particularly, no.
That's okay. The one we're all proud of, Warren G. Harding.
I don't think he done very much for the country.
And you were of age when he was around, so you probably remember him very well,
yeah.
More than most would. Calvin Coolidge.
Yes, I remember him.
Do you like Calvin Coolidge?
I thought he was an honest man and tried to do his best.
Herbert Hoover.
No, not particularly. I remember, although I did vote, but I did like some of his ideas.
Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh, yes. He was there for quite a while. And I thought he was the one that started our Social Security. He tried to help the people a lot.
Harry Truman.
Yes, he had ideas, but they didn't seem to go with me very well.
Dwight Eisenhower.
Yes, I enjoyed him. Some people didn't, but I did.
John Kennedy.
Yes, I did. I know at school, when he was killed, I was at school, and so many people said that they thought he would. And then when we have our last president, everyone said he'll go the same way. But thank gosh, we haven't had anybody killed that important since.
I agree with you. Thank goodness for that. Lyndon Johnson.
You know, I don't know why I didn't remember much about him, and I don't know why.
Just isn't one that sticks out for you.
Yeah.
Richard Nixon.
I liked his wife.
Well, we'll leave it at that. That's a good place to put that. Jerry Ford.
Yes, I liked him. He seemed to be so natural with the people.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I think he tried very hard, but he was up against a wall.
Ronald Reagan.
Yes, I did.
Like Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
George H.W. Bush, the father.
He tried his best to do what he could. The country was sort of in a turmoil right then.
Bill Clinton.
Well, I have two. Sometimes I thought okay, and then the next time I wasn't with some of the things he'd do.
I can understand. I think a lot of people felt that way. George W. Bush, the son.
I always felt that he got in because of his father.
It could have been. It could have been, Helen. I wouldn't deny that. And our current president, Barack Obama.
Well, there's some things I agree with him, but I think it's hard to overcome his background and all.
Let me ask you this, Helen, somebody who was born in 1908. There are two things that just popped in my mind. Number one is, did you ever think, because I know a lot of people didn't, think they would ever see an African American as president? Did you ever think you'd see that?
No, I never thought of it.
Did it make you happy when you saw it happen?
I was afraid.
Now, why is that?
I was afraid of the ideas that it's like a mixed marriage. You don't know what's going to happen.
I think people can relate to that. Helen, the other thing was man on the moon. What was it like to see man walking on the moon?
Oh, that was wonderful. Wonderful.
In 104 years, do you have any regrets?
Oh, I sure have been far from perfect. But I hope I haven't hurt too many people. I enjoy people and try to keep a thought on both sides of a question.
At 104, and the close calls you've had, with the close calls you've had, do you ever think of death?
No.
Just going to keep on trucking along.
That's right.
That's the best way to be. Well, let me put it, do you fear death?
No. No.
Now, why is that? A lot of people do.
Well, I came from a family who always went to Sunday school and church, and I have just felt that for some reason or other, I never think of death.
Good. I wish everybody felt that way. A lot of people think about it, but I'm glad you don't. Helen, before I get to the final question, I want to show some of these great pictures, so we'll pan on these pictures. This is Fairfield High School class of 1926, professional athlete and education leader. You were inducted into this Hall of Fame in 2010. That's a beautiful picture. What do you think when you see that girl there, Helen?
I wish I was out well now.
I think you're doing just fine, Helen. I think you're doing just fine. This is a great one. Athlete basketball, 1925 to 1926, inducted Valentine's Day 2009 into the High School Athletic Hall of Fame. Look at that. That is great. What an accolade that is. And this is a very neat picture here. Ohio High School girls basketball state runner-up, 1925 to 1926. Helen, are any of those girls still with us?
No.
All gone. Well, they look like a sprightly bunch then, so that's very nice. And one more thing back here. This is a great photo. Dear Helen, per your request, here are some copies of the photos. We are also sending one to your friend, Helen. Thank you for being such a good sport. Happy birthday, all the best, 2008. That would have been your 100th birthday. Sincerely, Lisa Marie Miller. Look at you, Helen, with Brutus Buckeye and the signed football. Look at that. Helen, how did you become such an Ohio State fan?
Well, I guess just liking basketball and enjoying after, particularly when I moved down here with my son, and we got the first, when they didn't used to sell tickets, and we've had tickets ever since.
Well, that has been a while ago when they didn't sell tickets. Before we ask Helen the final question, we have a great set of newspaper articles over here, if we can zoom in on that. That was for Helen's 100th birthday in the Columbus Dispatch. Very nice. Look at those pictures. You and Brutus Buckeye at 100 years old. Helen, the final question I have for you here today is, how would you like to be remembered by your family, your friends, maybe people watching this program? How would you like to be remembered?
I really don't know. I hope it don't bore them.
You didn't bore me, Helen, and I don't think you bored anybody in the audience, and I think they'll remember you as I do, kindly. But we're not going to remember you yet, because we're going to do this again on your 105th and 6th and 7th, however long it'll go. I think you've got plenty left. Helen Crouse, 104 years old. We're not going to see her like again